katiba yetu ya Kenya ikiweza kuletwa na mwanasheria mkuu Mheshimiwa Dorcas Oduor. Katiba, Mheshimiwa Rais, ni sheria kuu ya nchi ambayo sheria zote hutoka ndani ya katiba hii. Tarehe kama ya leo Agosti mwaka wa 2010 tuliweza kuasisi katiba hii. Tumshangilie kwa makofi mazuri mwanasheria mkuu anapoweza kuweka katiba hii mahali ambapo wageni walioko ndani ya ukumbi huu na hali kadhalika wananchi wanaofuatilia mbashara kuweza kutazama nakala ya kwanza kabisa ya katiba ya Kenya. Mheshimiwa Rais, katiba hii huzungumzia usawa, amani pamoja na utawala bora. Jinsi tulivyosikia watoto wetu wakiweza kuzungumzia kwa mara ya kwanza kwa utangulizi. Mheshimiwa Rais, itakayofuata ni bendera rasmi ya taifa la Kenya. Bendera hii kwa umaridadi, Mheshimiwa Rais, ikiwa imebebwa na wanajeshi wetu, jeshi la nchi kavu, jeshi la wanaanga na jeshi la wanamaji, kwa sababu Mheshimiwa Rais, katiba imetwika jukumu la ulinzi wa taifa katika majeshi ya ulinzi ya Kenya, wakija kwa mwendo wa kinyonga. Mheshimiwa Rais, utatazama wakiweza kufungua bendera hii. Rangi ya kwanza kabisa ni rangi nyeusi ambayo inazungumzia sisi kama Wakenya. Kisha tuna rangi nyeupe ambayo huzungumzia amani na umoja wetu. Rangi nyekundu ambayo inazungumzia damu tuliyoweza kuipoteza wakati wa kupigania uhuru, na rangi ya kijani kibichi, Mheshimiwa Rais, kuzungumzia masuala ya kilimo na mali ama rasilimali ambazo tuko nazo kama taifa. Tuwashangilie kwa makofi mazuri Mheshimiwa Rais, hii ikiwa ni nguzo muhimu katika vyombo vya mamlaka. Basi wataweza kukunja bendera hii rasmi ya taifa la Kenya kabla kuweza kuondoka mahali hapa. Kila kitu, Mheshimiwa Rais, katika majeshi ya ulinzi hufanywa kwa mpango na kwa muda mfupi. Wakiweza kuondoka kwa mwendo wa kinyonga, kabla ya kuondoka Mheshimiwa Rais, wataweka bendera hii kwenye stand kisha waweze kuondoka. Wakiondoka kwa mwendo wa kinyonga, Mheshimiwa Rais, kando na katiba, Mheshimiwa Rais, vyombo vilivyosailia vya mamlaka vitaweza kuletwa mahali hapa na majeshi ya ulinzi kuashiria kwamba Kenya inaongozwa na katiba. Basi Mheshimiwa Rais, itakayofuata hivi sasa ni coat of arms, ambapo tutaweza kuletewa na mwenzetu toka jeshi la wanaanga. Mheshimiwa Rais, samahani, ni lyrics za wimbo wa taifa, maneno ya wimbo wa taifa, ambapo Mheshimiwa Rais, tulivyoweza kukariri muda wa mfupi ulioweza kukamilika wimbo wetu wa taifa, tunaanza na kumwomba Mwenyezi Mungu aweze kuilinda nchi yetu, undugu na ushirikiano, uzalendo na hali kadhalika Mheshimiwa Rais kuzidi kulinda taifa letu. Tumshangilie kwa makofi mazuri anapoweka nakala hii ya wimbo wa taifa ama maneno ya wimbo wa taifa kwenye stendi. Mheshimiwa Rais, takayofuata ni ngao ya taifa ama ukipenda coat of arms, ambapo wenzetu kutoka majeshi ya ulinzi ya Kenya wataweza kuleta mali hapa. Mheshimiwa Rais, kwenye ngao hiyo ya taifa utaweza kuona kwamba kuna simba wawili. Simba hawa inaashiria ulinzi ambao mumeweza kututwika kama wananchi wa Kenya kwa ulinzi wa taifa letu la Kenya. Mishale utakayoshuhudia kando ni umoja wetu na uhuru na kuwa tayari kulinda taifa. Kisha Mheshimiwa Rais, utaweza kuona bendera za taifa letu jinsi nilivyoweza kukariri, rangi hizo zikisimamia kila moja. Basi jogoo unayoiona ikiwa na shoka inaashiria mwanzo mpya, na kwenye chini yake utaona neno harambee linalosema sote tuvute pamoja. Mheshimiwa Rais, tukivuta pamoja tutakuwa washindi. Tushangilie kwa makofi tafadhali. Mheshimiwa Rais, kutufungia wanapoondoka wenzetu wataweza kutuletea na kuweza kuzindua rasmi muhuri wa taifa la Kenya. Muhuri huu Mheshimiwa Rais, ambao huwapa walio uongozini mamlaka ya kuweza kutekeleza wajibu wao kwa niaba ya Wakenya. Unavyotazama Mheshimiwa Rais, wakiweza kuja kwa umaridadi kabisa kuweza kuzindua muhuri huu rasmi wa taifa la Kenya. Na hii leo Mheshimiwa Rais, wananchi pia watapata fursa ya kuweza kushuhudia muhuri huu kwa umaridadi, wakiweza kuletwa na Regimental Sergeant Major ili wakaweze kutekeleza wajibu huu. Tuwape makofi mazuri Mheshimiwa Rais wakiweza kuzindua rasmi muhuri wa taifa la Kenya. Wanaondoka kwa umaridadi, na Mheshimiwa Rais wanapoondoka, ningeomba kwa heshima tuweze kuketi ili niweze kumwalika Bwana Mike Gitonga pamoja na ndugu Boni Msambi waweze kuendelea na ratiba itakayofuata.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Ladies and gentlemen, with the instruments of state now duly installed, we can now proceed formally. Your Excellency, the contours of the Constitution of Kenya are marked in 18 chapters. Each chapter represents a pillar in the structure of our democratic state. Before these chapters, we find the preamble, the soul of the Constitution, a timeless declaration that captures the hopes, values, and collective vision of the Kenyan people. On this occasion, and always, we are called to reflect on the enduring words of the preamble. These words express the solemn covenant we make or we made with ourselves and with future generations. A covenant grounded in justice, unity, and the promise of a better Kenya. Your Excellency, sir, ladies and gentlemen, we will now showcase a brief replay of the promulgation day embedded in the echoes of this preamble. Ladies and gentlemen, the replay.
We, the people of Kenya, acknowledging the supremacy of the Almighty God of all creation, honoring those who heroically struggled to bring freedom and justice to our land, proud of our ethnic, cultural, and religious diversity, and determined to live in peace and unity as one indivisible sovereign nation, respectful of the environment, which is our heritage, and determined to sustain it for the benefit of future generations, committed to nurturing and protecting the well-being of the individual, the family, communities, and the nation, recognizing the aspirations of all Kenyans for a government based on the essential values of human rights, equality, freedom, democracy, social justice, and the rule of law, exercising our sovereign and inalienable right to determine the form of governance for our country, and having participated fully in the making of this Constitution, adopt, enact, and give this Constitution to ourselves and to our future generations. God bless Kenya.
Shall be the new Constitution of Kenya with effect from the 27th August, the year 2010.
Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, among the most transformative features introduced by the Constitution of Kenya are two foundational pillars: the establishment of a devolved system of governance and the creation of constitutional commissions and independent offices as provided for under Chapter 15. As part of the framework of the organization of government, the mandate to coordinate the implementation of the recommendation of these commissions and independent offices, as well as to oversee the working relationship between the two levels of government, is vested in the office of the Deputy President. It is in the recognition of this constitutional mandate that today's summit is jointly convened by His Excellency the Deputy President and the Honorable Attorney General. It is now my distinct honor and high privilege to invite His Excellency the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya to deliver his introductory remarks and formally set in motion the program of this historic first Katiba Day. Welcome, Your Excellency.
Many Kenyans for years. This is a constitution that main difference between two being dominant parties that time. Dominant parties, I mean dominant political parties that time. For the 2010 Constitution, first process was longer, difficult. More importantly, it invoked a lot of participation of the people. Their representation. Many of them elected, make up of those who have been elected. That month, the 90s. Voices of the party. 2010 leading it with the voices of the leaders who were holding office at that time. Mr. President, we are also lucky. Our constitution sets a very clear hierarchy of the priorities of the nation. And that is the preamble we've just listened to, and that has just been replayed here. That preamble summarizes the national priorities. Those priorities are structured in terms of who calls the shots in our country. If you look at that preamble, the people assert themselves as the supreme human, the highest supreme human organ of constitution making. Unlike the 1963 Constitution, which had concepts like the supremacy of parliament and other concepts which have been overtaken by events today. Interestingly, Your Excellency, I have noted as a student of constitutional law that the same preamble, the people asserting themselves as the highest constitution-making organ, the people, they do recognize two things: that this nation exists subject to a higher authority, the Almighty God of all creation. That part is normally left a lot in constitution making, especially in analyzing the structure of our constitution. But the preamble also has told us downstream, the people who are the highest human constitution making organ have delegated most of what they would be doing themselves to organs of states and to the levels of government that are represented here. Both the organs of state, the three arms of government, and the two levels of government. Your Excellency, that preamble also helps us to understand our national values. We respect the individual, the family, the community, and the nation. That hierarchy again of the units that constitute our nation are spelled out there. The other feature, Your Excellency, again summarized in the preamble and elaborated in the many chapters, the 18 chapters that follow, is the feature that talks about intergenerational responsibilities and equity between generations. And the Constitution asserts that no generation is superior than the other. There are obligations of the present generation to future generations in perpetuity. Another distinguishing factor or ingredient of that Constitution is the national values, the rule of law, democracy, social justice, and even environmental justice. Again, it is spelled out in the preamble. The other feature is the checks and balances system. If you look at the chapters on the three arms of government, the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary, and how they relate with each other, the national government and the county governments, the independent commissions and offices, Again, that relationship has been defined there. Two other distinguishing characteristics before I end my remarks, Your Excellency. And the one is that the Constitution creates a very, very paradigmatic shift on the rights and freedoms of the individual in a very dramatic way. And even as we pause to look at the challenges we are facing as a country today to implement this wonderful constitution, one of the areas that has brought a lot of heavy lifting as a nation is that issue around the freedoms of the individual and how individual citizens relate with one another. Finally, Your Excellency, this constitution, again in the preamble, summarizes our sovereignty as a nation in two aspects. One is it has said that we must protect the nation and its people so that we can be free from fear and free from want. Those are two important aspects of this constitution. The freedom from fear is what protects individuals and citizens so that they are not harmed by one another. They are not harmed by organs of state. They don't harm each other. And then you have the military for the defense and also the institutions of internal security for the internal moderation of law and order to prevent us from hurting each other so that we can be free from fear. But finally, this constitution is also about our sovereignty so that we can be a country free from want. Again, this is a very, very introduction, not only for Kenya's constitutional framework, but for constitutional theory and practice around the world. Many countries have avoided, and they speak about democracy and the rule of law and civil liberties without saying, as much as these are important, there are other freedoms that a human being must be free from to actualize their full potential on earth. They must be free from hunger. They must be free from sickness. They must live in dignity. And that is the chapter on the Bill of Rights, on the socio-economic rights, which your administration, Your Excellency, has taken head on to deal with the difficult issues of public health and ensuring every citizen has the highest standard of health, making sure that we, as many Kenyans as possible, live in dignified dwellings, which have sanitation, which can pass for dwellings that are of dignity, and so on and so on. The food security programs, the agriculture programs are speaking to our socio-economic rights enshrined in Article 43 that calls on the state to make sure to asserting the sovereignty of the people of Kenya so that they can be free, not only from fear, but they can be free from want. Your Excellency, as I call the panelists who are much more qualified than I am on this subject, I want to say many of the people who fought, labored and sweated so that we can have this beautiful Grunom law, this Grunom, this constitution, are not with us today. They have rested from the sweat and the labors of this world, and they are no longer with us. But their spirit walks with us. A few are still with us. And looking around at this hall, I see many, many of those who are part of this very difficult but important project for recreating a new Kenya. I have seen former Prime Minister Raila Odinga and many others. And I think I am in good space, and I look forward this afternoon to refreshing my memory, my mind, and my value system as a Kenyan on what I need to do to make sure that I live to the spirit, and I live up to the spirit and expectations of the Constitution in the office that I occupy. With those many remarks, Your Excellency, I've been requested to call the panelists. I don't know where they'll speak from. You give me, where will they sit? They'll come here. So, Your Excellency, sorry if I've spoken for long. You know, in your presence, my speech should be short. But I speak for long when I'm doing my own event. I'm sorry about that. I will call the following panelists who represent various shades of representation. The first one is our sister, my colleague in the profession, the Honorable Lady Justice Njoki Ndung'u, Judge of the Supreme Court, to represent the judiciary. Welcome, Justice Njoki, a very, very prominent player in the process, the 20 years of the constitution-making process. Welcome, Judge. I'll also call another colleague of mine and my senior in the profession and also in the academy, Professor Makau Mutua, Senior Presidential Advisor on Constitutional Affairs and Human Rights. Again, he needs no introduction. I will also call my brother again and my colleague, the Honorable Dr. Otiende Amolo, Senior Counsel, Member of Parliament for Rarieda, representing Parliament. I will also call FCPA Nancy Gathungu, Auditor General, who will represent constitutional commissions and independent offices. I will call to the dais Governor Fatuma Achani, Governor of Kwale County, representing the Council of Governors. And please make your way to the stage. Asanteni sana.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I think we'll go straight into it. Your Excellency, the President, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, our hope is that we're going to have a fairly open, transparent discussion on the achievements and the challenges 15 years down the line. For a long time, we have referred to the Katiba as the new constitution. I think the population mean in the country is about 19 years. The Katiba is 15 years old. I think it's fair to say that a majority of Kenyans have lived with this constitution. So they are born after the promulgation of the Katiba. And the Katiba over the last few days has had quite a bit of discussion, Your Excellency, because of your gesture to honor this day going forward. And I wish to thank you sincerely, Your Excellency, for that gesture, because constitutions are ideas, and ideas require ceremony, ideas require norms to take hold. And for our constitutionalism to take hold, we need this celebration. So I want to thank you most sincerely. You get criticized a lot for a lot of things. We must celebrate when you do great things, and this is indeed a great and wonderful thing. The gentlemen and ladies up here are experts, as His Excellency the Deputy President said, on the matter, the challenges, including on the organizations and institutions. If you ask the average Kenyan, they will have a positive view about devolution, for example. And devolution is represented by High Excellency, the governor here. And they'll have a positive view, generally speaking, about the judiciary. They might not have a similar view about our parliament. And we said we're going to be transparent, so we're going to be asking the Honorable Senior Counsel about the challenges that Parliament may have faced in implementing the Constitution. So I'm going to start at the very fine. The Supreme Court judge was a member of the Committee of Experts, Your Excellency, and the Deputy President said there were many who took part in the process of constitution making. I'm happy to note that you, Your Excellency, were a member of the Parliamentary Select Committee, and so was your Prime Cabinet Secretary. And of course, our former Prime Minister was a key player in the process. But on this side, we have the Senior Counsel on that end, who was a member of the Committee of Experts, and Her Ladyship, the Supreme Court Judge, who was also a member of the Committee of Experts. Those are the two organs that really process the Katiba in terms of the review process. So I'm going to ask Justice Njoki, who was a former parliamentarian, who is a lawyer of much repute, and who, during her time, championed quite a bit of the Bill of Rights. What she thinks really the Constitution has delivered for the judiciary, to the point where Kenyans think the judiciary ought to be celebrated. Justice Njoki.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think that the thinking during the drafting of the Constitution, that the judiciary was a subject matter, that there was trust deficit around the judiciary because most of the judges, or all the judges, were direct presidential appointees. The judiciary had, and therefore Kenya were distrusting. I think moving from the promulgation of the Constitution of Kenya 2010, we've seen many changes. We now see far much more decisional independence of judges, where judges fear not that night phone call from State House, as was in the dark days, where now we have seen more operational independence, as gradually the judiciary is getting a little bit more funding, that is increasing staff. We are now increasing judges. The judiciary is now operational in 47 counties, and therefore access to justice, which was partially a vision of the Constitution, is now, we are on the journey there. There's also the issue of Kenyans who now come to the judiciary. And people say that Kenyans are very litigious. They come to court on every matter. I think that it should be celebrated. There was a time before the Constitution of 2010 when not all Kenyans could come to court. There was the issue, what we call formally in the legal language, of locus standi. But now, any Kenyan can come on any issue, and they are doing so. And therefore, I do believe that the Constitution is working, and the judiciary too.
Thank you very much. A round of applause for her, but I'll still be with her. And we said we're going to be transparent. So indeed, there are also those who see some challenges when it comes to the judiciary in terms of overreach of the judiciary. For example, the gentleman next to me, representing the executive, probably will say they are having it difficult to run the executive because of overreach by the judiciary. There are those who would say that the judiciary has independence, it cannot be touched by any outside party, yet the judiciary shields its officers from accountability. What would be the remarks from the Lady Justice? And I understand you are a sitting judge and your remarks will be circumscribed.
I think that the Constitution is very clear in Article 10, where all the national values bind all state officers, those who work in the executive, those who are in parliament and in the judiciary, that we must follow the rule of law, that there must be transparency, accountability, we must allow participation of the people. Therefore, it is the duty of the judiciary to be the guardian of the Constitution and to defend where any arm of government does not follow the Constitution, that cannot be judicial overreach. That can only be fidelity to the Constitution. There are many challenges, of course. We've seen that as we listen to some of the cases. There are a number of tough wars. You know, some of the cases that come before us, some are between Senate and National Assembly, others are between the national government and the county government. But those are disputes that we do resolve. However, there is a concern that sometimes political questions are brought to the courts, and courts cannot answer political questions. Courts may only answer judicial questions and points of law, and perhaps therefore, the political class ought to be encouraged to resolve political disputes outside of the corridors of the courts.
Thank you very much. Let me go on the other side. Senior Counsel, Parliament is the first institution of the Constitution. Much is given by the Constitution to Parliament. It has the power of the purse, it has the power to vet the President's senior appointments, it has the power to make laws, it has the power to summon any and all government organs. Yet, I think I speak for many if I say many Kenyans are not happy with our National Assembly and our Senate, starting from the President and the former Prime Minister all the way to the villages. What is it about Parliament that has not endeared itself to the people as far as the powers given to Parliament by the new Constitution and the powers given by the people to Parliament?
Thank you, Session Chair. First, allow me to thank the President for the proclamation. Your Excellency, you'll be surprised when you are watching the ceremony for promulgation. I'm sure you did not see the committee of experts anywhere. We were 9 of us, 3 international experts, 6 local experts. Our chair has since passed on, the Honorable Nzamba Kitonga AC, and I'm praying that he might be recognized posthumously. But as soon as we released the final text of the Constitution to the government printer, nobody remembered us. We didn't even have a seat. So it is today that now I have a seat. So I thank you 15 years later. Njokindungu will tell you, Professor Sempebwa brought his wife all the way from Uganda and could not sit. Secondly, fortunately for us, both yourself and the Prime Minister were in Parliament, and you are there much longer than me. So if there are things to be known, I'm sure you know them. But more fortunately, I'm here with my Speaker, Session Chair. I hold no leadership position in Parliament. So if anybody is to be crucified, please look for the Honorable Wetangula. Me, I'll give my perspective. I will give my perspective from having participated in the Committee of Experts to my experience now in 8 years. First, I am the first to concede, and I've said this and I've conceded it in public, that I don't think we are doing well in Parliament, especially the 13th Parliament. I am not here to apologize. But just like all other branches, there are successes, but there's work to be done. At least in our favor, 15 years down the line, we still have a bicameral Parliament. 15 years down the line, we've held elections regularly. We are still able to vet. We are even able to impeach, as we recently did. So at least it is there. But there are 2 problems that I see. One is historical, and one is institutional. The historical one, Chair, you will remember, is the problem between the National Assembly and the Senate. In the Committee of Experts, we had designated the Senate as the upper house. You who were in Parliament then decided that we did not need a Senate and removed it. When it came to us, given the historical experience that we had in this country, we decided we needed a Senate at least to protect devolution. So unfortunately, all the powers we had given to the Senate were removed, and we left the Senate with a threadbare role of protecting devolution and taking care of the interest of the devolved units. Very little. And ultimately, therefore, with the subsequent interpretation by the Supreme Court and all, there remains sibling rivalry between the Senate and the National Assembly, and sometimes it becomes a problem for Parliament as Parliament. That is historical. The institutional one is one of our creation, and it was created before I joined Parliament. We changed, the Committee of Experts had proposed a parliamentary system. Members of Parliament, in their wisdom in Naivasha, changed it to a presidential system. And so we had to make things to adopt to that presidential system. Whatever we made to adopt to the presidential system does not seem to have been reflected in the structure of politics. So that what we have now is you have members of Parliament from the party that is in the executive, and because they are the majority in Parliament, they call themselves government. You have members of Parliament from the minority who call themselves opposition. Members of Parliament are yet to learn that there is no government or opposition inside of Parliament. There is only the majority and the minority, and collectively, we are supposed to oversight the executive. That we have not learned, and it's something we struggle with, and that's part of the problem. I think moving forward, there are things to be done. One, is Parliament must seriously work on the trust deficit that we currently have. But secondly, and Njoki talked about judicial overreach, we had a colloquium with the judiciary recently, and I made the proposition that while the judiciary is free to handle Parliament in any way, especially when it's doing a quasi-judicial duty, please let Parliament handle legislation, because there are inbuilt mechanisms. You can find us wrong later. But lastly, from the executive perspective, it must also reduce its chokehold on Parliament. Kidogo tu, then we'll be able to move forward. Thank you very much.
But may I remind the senior counsel that power is never given. The Constitution has clothed Parliament with the powers to oversight the executive. It's just that Parliament has decided to go to sleep. So probably is to ask Parliament to wake up and don't give the President everything he asks for. So let me ask Professor, who represents the President's office. The executive is the largest organ of government. The executive is the implementer and usually is the culprit when it comes to rights. What is it about our Katiba that has limited the powers of our executive to make sure that the executive is accountable to the people?
Thank you very much, Abdul Kadir. I just want to say, first of all, you'll sympathize with me because you have asked me to answer a question and to speak about the executive in the presence of my boss.
I have told you in the military, when you want to speak freely, you ask your commander to speak freely. So we'll ask the President to give you permission to speak freely.
Luckily, the 2010 Constitution protects me from any adverse conduct from anyone in the Republic. I just want to say that of the three arms of government, the one that has the awesome responsibility for the security, the protection, and the prosperity of the Republic of Kenya is the executive. This is a job like no other. Now, in constitutional theory, as you know, and political practice, the three arms of government are supposed to be co-equal. But I think it is common knowledge to philosophers and scholars that the executive is the first among equals. And you recall, of course, that democracy itself as a phenomenon for the governance of society is a very difficult practice to execute. It was none other than Winston Churchill, who opined that democracy is the worst form of government except for